Welcome to this video on the topic of Year 7 Statistical Mathematics. Lesson 1, Statistical Data Categories. In this lesson, we seek to build an appreciation of what is the study of statistics, after which we seek to learn about the different categories of statistical data, those being continuous, discrete, and categorical. By the end of this lesson, you'll be able to list 3 categories of statistical data classification, and secondly, you'll be able to classify statistical data as being either continuous, discrete, or categorical. Now the first question looming in front of us is, what is statistics? In short, statistics is the branch of mathematics involved in the collection, processing, and analysis of data. Its location on the mathematics concerns itself with itself, so it's its own branch, and it borrows a bit of set theory for representation, and of course it borrows from the main stuff, so like counting and adding and subtracting. So it spans out from just its own little branch here. Now going back, we said that statistics is the branch of mathematics involved in the collection, processing, and analysis of data. What this allows us to do is to convert many pieces of data and convert it into a singular idea, result, or response. Now, giving this context, imagine that we put a vote out to students asking whether students should have Fridays off or not. Depending on what students vote for, they'll either have Fridays off or they'll be at school on Fridays. Now the data from that is represented as shown over here, so not very user-friendly. But breaking it down, if we say that all the y's represent yes and the n's represent no, then what we find is that we had 11 students that said they would like to have Friday off, and 3 students said they didn't want to have Friday off. Now using statistics, we're able to come to a consensus that based on results, you will come to school. You will not have Friday off, you'll come to school. And when you look at this, you probably think, well, how's that possible? There were 11 students who said, let's have Friday off, and 3 said no, but statistics says we come to school. And that's what we're focusing on in this topic. It's how we make educated decisions to turn many pieces of information into a singular result. Now, before we can get down to this bottom part here, let's take a few steps back to the top line. This is where our focus is on today. Now, there are 2 pieces of information that concern us here. On the left, we have this D, and we call that a data set. Now, we'll get back to in that a sec, but on the right over here, we have what we call our data. Now, the data itself is the responses, or are the responses that we got back from students. So each little point here represents a singular vote by a singular student. Now, the collection of these responses goes into form what we call the data set. The data set being the entire collection of the data points that we got. Now, what we want to do here is, how do we classify data? Or, how do we know how to analyze this data? Now, the way in which we look at this is we look at something called a data classification. Depending on the data we deal with, will determine how we process it. Now, data may be classified into at least 3 different categories. The first category that we're going to look at is called discrete data. Discrete data is data that is collected through counting it. So examples of this could be counting the number of students within your class, counting the number of Smarties within a packet, or counting the number of books that you read in the previous year. So if you count your data, then it's discrete data. Now the next sort of data that you can get is called continuous data. Continuous data comes about through measuring something. So if you want to get the heights of students within a class, you measure the students. If you want to get the weights of a bag of Smarties, then you're going to weigh the bag, so you're measuring it. Or it could be the hours spent reading per year, so you measure the amount of time. So compare the difference. Books read per year, so you're counting the books. Time spent reading per year, so you're measuring the time. Now the final type of classification that we look at in the Year 7 course is called categorical data. So this is data that's not numerical, so it doesn't involve numbers. This is the same data that we saw over here, so there's no numbers, it's just yes or no responses. That's categorical. Now, other examples of this could be the suburbs students live in, favorite sauce to put on chips, or your preferred color. Now, there are many more examples of all of these classifications here, but that's all we're going to go on from this point in time in this lesson. Now, going back, the success criteria for this lesson was to be able to list the 3 categories of statistical data classification, those being discrete, continuous, and categorical. So if you can memorize these and you can memorize the definition, then that's the first job done for this lesson. Now, the second target for this lesson was to be able to classify statistical data as being continuous, discrete, or categorical. But for most of us, we're not going to be at that stage yet because we're still learning, and that's okay. So for now, what I recommend is this slide over here, copy this down into your book and memorize all of the information on it. After which, pick some practice questions and work your way through categorizing data as being either discrete, continuous, and categorical. Through practice, we build our understanding and we become proficient at the math we're studying.